Hi there. When we did the evaluation on the TR7, the car checked out pretty good, but we did have three safety flaws. The first was the soft brake pedal, which meant we couldn't take it out and drive it, but we did run it and check it over, and everything else checked out well. And after the shop completed repairing for the soft brake pedal, something we couldn't do here because we didn't have a set of brake wrenches or flare wrenches in our basic toolkit, which was very frustrating for me because I have them but not in the basic toolkit. So we sent it out to be fair and not cheat. But the shop, after doing the repair, did test drive it, and everything on it is great. The second problem was at some point in the car's life somebody removed the crankcase ventilation system. So we have to deal with that to have it emissions legal and so it runs properly. And the third thing was the battery hold down. Yeah, it's got one, but it's pretty ratty and it's not something that I'd like to use. So we're going to start dealing with the crankcase ventilation system and the battery hold down right now here on Real Builds. Now this TR7, like a lot of cars in the 1970s, has had its emissions removed. Now that where I live, that's actually okay, but it's not a really good idea. And we need to put back the crankcase ventilation system because I don't know about you, but I hate oily grime on my engines, and it's unnecessarily messy. So we're going to fix that right now here on Real Builds. And we're going to start by just taking a quick look at what we're talking about. The Triumphs have right up in here a vent on the valve cover that's meant to go to these two positions on the carburetors. And this just takes the spent gas out of the valve cover and the heated up oil and things like that and run them through the exhaust and burn them up and make them go away. So what we need to do right now is remove these pieces, cut some line, and put it in place so that that system works again. Now we'll start the process simply by getting rid of the plugs that were put in to keep any vacuum leaks on the engine. And this won't take a lot, we just got to remove the bolts they screwed in. Get our fuel-safe vacuum hose and do a trial fit. And we're going to need to go over to here, so we know it needs to be right about that long. Past underneath, make sure we're not making a new mess. And cut it to length. Now we just need to split it to put in a T In this case we're using a brass tee. Of the correct dimension. So, there we go. Some hoses are obviously easier than others. Here we go. And a final piece of line. To run from the T-fitting to the vent. There we go. And the basics are done. We're going to fire it up, check the system, and as long as everything's okay, put hose clamps here, 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 and here, and this project's done. Now for a quick little fire up. No leaks, no runs, no errors, and our first repair is completed. Now we'll get ready to do something about the battery tray. One moment here on Real Builds. Okay, and there we have our finished handiwork. You can see all the hose clamps in place. You can see the hoses are safely routed away from all the throttle linkages and other linkages. And everything's neat and clean and it's properly hooked up. Now, how did we know how to hook it up? We have the TR7 service manual. So over the last couple of nights, I spent several hours reading through how the system was supposed to work when all the components were there. Now, we don't have the rest of the components for the air injection and for some of the other bits, but this makes a big difference in the way it's supposed to operate and draws off out the hot oil and the waste oil fumes from underneath the valve cover and into the carburetors. So we've done a good thing, good job. That's one more thing off the list. Brakes have already been handled by the shop, and tomorrow we'll take on the battery hold down. So till then, thanks for joining us at Real Builds. Welcome back. Well, we're on to our last safety project with the TR7 in its first stage, and that's the battery. The battery itself is good, the connections are good, but if you look right here, you'll see the battery's held in place with a bungee cord. And yeah, it works, but it's just not right. So we're going to pull the battery and get straight into getting rid of that bungee cord and getting into a proper battery hold down. To begin that, first we pull the dipstick, because the dipstick tube attaches to the air cleaner, and we need to make the air cleaner go away. There we go. Because we need to give ourselves some room. Next, the bungee strap itself has got to go. Now we disconnect the battery before we go any farther. Now be really careful when you're doing this. If you ground out your wrench on the bodywork before the battery is disconnected, you can wind up with everything from a flash to an electrical short to a severe instance. You could even wind up with a fire. And we really don't want to wind up with that kind of trouble here on Real Builds. So I'm just going to get a set of pliers. And we're going to wiggle this free. It's been on there a long time. We'll use a screwdriver to spread it a little. There we go. And that's the positive off. Now things are pretty safe. Now the negative cable. And our battery is disconnected. A quick lift out and put it someplace safe. Now keep it at arm's length, don't get it on you. We've got the battery out and we can start looking at how we're going to get it back in. What we need right now is a good old rag. And a brush. Clean out everything around the battery. We want to get it nice and clean. Hey ho.
I'm going to be yelling at you.
Who is?
Mom.
Why?
I know.
That's part of the beauty of working at home. You get the odd little interruption from family, but that's all what it's worth. And it's how kids get interested in what you're doing. So, we're cleaning that all up. All the dust and dirt, if there's any corrosion, get rid of it. Now is the time. Now we're going to start looking at how we're putting it back in. The last time I was out at the do-it-yourself auto wrecker, I picked up some extra bits and pieces. It only cost $10. So cheap way to do it. A battery tray that's the right size for my battery. And that'll keep the corrosion from getting onto other components. While I was there, I picked up some battery hold downs from other vehicles. We'll see which one's going to work best. Apparently not that one. That one's a little tall for there. That one's looking almost right. That's even better. So I got one. And what do I do here to make everything fit? You know, I might just be able to make that work with a slight bend. Now, using a set of pliers and our crescent wrench from our toolkit, we're just going to take a little bit of a bend out. So, let's see how that works. Not bad. In fact, that'll work just great now. So there's one. Let's see if it's tall enough now. Hi, Gracie Doodle. The family dog has come to visit. And just one moment. Sorry about that, short family interruption, which is never a bad thing. And now, let's see what we do here. And a little more modding's needed. So I think, let's try it this way. There we go. Great, there's one done. Now put the battery tray back in. Seems to be in the right places. Now we're going to give our battery a quick cleanup, and then we're going to drop in back in. Soap and water or a good cleaner is all you need for the battery. So excuse me for a minute while I step in to do that, and we'll be right back. So we're doing our first trial fit with the battery. You can see it's been cleaned up, looks good again, but problem one is the battery hold down doesn't come up over the battery. So we're going to have to take a look at how we're going to deal with that. So once again, battery out. And it needs to be an inch or two taller. So we're going to take this one out, and I saved a real long one, so we need about 2 inches taller, like that. Let's take a look at how we can mount this one. Okay, I think we've got a plan here. Let's give you a look. Okay, if you look real close, right down in the area of the battery box, you can see at one point in its life the coil was relocated there. So what we're going to be able to do is take this hold down, which is longer, and get it to hook right into the coil bracket, making for a nice secure hold where it won't go anywhere. On the other side, we'll be using the factory holes right here to hold the other side of the tie down, like so. And we'll have a nice little setup that'll clear everything, hold everything down well. So we'll jam that one in there so it doesn't go anyplace. We'll take this one and double check the fit. Yep, good. Now, battery box back in, making sure it clears everything. Then our battery. Then our battery. Go. We'll just slip the negative back on. It's safe that way because there's no power. And that way we know the cable fits. A little more cleanup here as things slosh around. And now we start. Okay, here's the final pictures of our install on the battery. Now I'm afraid we had a bit of a camera glitch as we were finishing off, so you didn't get to see it at the time. But now that it's all in place, you can see how much better it is than a bungee cord. So we have this side bolted into place, nice and securely tied into the coil bracket. This side ties into the factory bracket. We had to put a little spacer under it because our piece wasn't quite the right length. Everything's painted, cleaned, and safe as a church. And that's what we want on all of the repairs we do and all of the work we do on real builds. Now, that takes us to the end of our safety items. We've nailed them all. We've got the brakes handled. We've got the battery hold down handled. We've got the crankcase ventilation handled. We know everything's good. We know she's a solid ride. Next step is to go back and look at exactly what we want to do to start improving the appearance and boosting the performance. And that's what we'll be doing next here on Real Builds.